Hello friends and welcome back to my channel. My name is Alicia and today I'm doing the School Days book tag. This tag was originally created by What Victoria Read and I was tagged by Michelle Lexi. And as always, I will have both of their videos linked down in the description. This tag has two sections. Part A is time of the day and part B is subjects. So let's go ahead and get started with part A. The first question is, first Belle, tell us about the book that first got you into reading. So normally my answer for this is Harry Potter. Around the same time that I was trying to get into Harry Potter, I was also trying to read just what my siblings were reading because they were older than me. I'm the youngest. So I was trying to read what they were reading, which was Harry Potter, Artemis Fowl, Redwall, I think. That might have been a few years later, but books like that. But in thinking about this question, I was also thinking about the fact that I think I actually liked reading before those books as well. I just was enjoying reading what was appropriate to my age. So before I started into chapter books, I kind of have vague memories of really enjoying reading the pre-chapter books that they make for really young readers. And I wouldn't want my parents to read those to me. I would want to read them myself. So I think my enjoyment of reading honestly goes back to the picture books and not only having my siblings and my parents read them to me, but also wanting to read them myself. It's just that the chapter books are what stick in my brain and what I actually kind of remember from that time period. So that is definitely what I credit as getting me into reading. Next is break time. Which book have you most recently had to take a break from or DNF? The last book that I officially DNF'd was The Sanatorium by Sarah Pierce. This is a book that I had out from my library. My hold ran out before I finished it. And I didn't try to renew it because I wasn't really in the mood to read. Even though I had it on audiobook, I was just not really feeling it. There was nothing really wrong with the story, but I just wasn't picking it up. Next is lunchtime. Tell us about your favorite book that features food. For this, I picked Arsenic and Adobo by Mia P. Manansala. This follows a woman who is working in her aunt's restaurant and is trying to help save the restaurant after someone is killed there after eating their food. And it's a mystery, but also very much centers food. This might be partially due to recency bias because I read this year, but also when thinking about this question, I was I guess I just don't read that many books that feature food very heavily because this was the only one that was really coming to mind that food was very prominent in the story and not just kind of and then they ate some stew or then they ate some bread. But food is very prevalent in the story and there's even recipes at the end of this book. So I thought this one would be the perfect book for this prompt. Next is Final Bell. Which book have you most recently finished reading? The last book I finished was Not a Happy Family by Sherry LaPena. This book follows as the parents of this incredibly wealthy family are killed and we're trying to figure out who did it, but we also get a glimpse into the life of this family that, as the title says, is unhappy and no one seems to really like each other, but they all kind of still protect each other. It's a very interesting story and I overall really enjoyed it. Next is homework. What was the last nonfiction book that you read and enjoyed? For this, I'm going to mention The Anthropocene Reviewed by John Green. I read this fairly recently. I enjoyed it. It's a book about essays about the human-centered planet, and I really enjoyed John Green's writing. This is definitely what came to mind for this prompt, although I do think I forgot to take into account some of the memoirs I've read recently. But nonetheless, this fairly recent nonfiction read that I really enjoyed. Next is Staff Room. Tell us about a book that you go to when you need to take a break. This is 100% The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. This is a comfort read for me at this point. This is a book that when I want to take a break, when I just need something comforting and that feels like home, or that's a break from the real world or a break from my other reading if I'm starting to feel overwhelmed by it. 100% The Night Circus is what I go to. Now moving on to part 2, which is subjects, and it says choose however many of the following you would like. I'm not going to do all of them. There's part of me that is a completionist and wanted to do all of them, but upon looking over a few of them, I just didn't feel like I had good answers for them. So I'm just going to go through the ones that I feel like I could actually talk about, starting with English. Tell us about a book you studied at school and recommend one book that you would like to add to the curriculum. So one book that I studied actually a fair amount is Hamlet, obviously by Shakespeare. This we not only studied in my English class, but also I was in the play my senior year of high school. So I spent a lot of time with the story and like analyzing it and discussing the ins and outs of what Shakespeare meant in this story and things like that. So this is one that I definitely spent a lot of time with. And the book I would like added to the curriculum is Transcendent Kingdom by Yakiyasi. I picked this because of the themes in this book. This follows a woman from an immigrant family and touches on the themes of addiction and mental health, specifically depression. And I feel like this is the kind of book that would be more helpful for teens to be reading, opposed to things like Hamlet. As much as I loved Hamlet, and I recognize that we can still learn a lot from the classics, and there are themes that can be applied to nowadays in so many different books, I kind of am of the opinion that we need more recent literature taught in schools, specifically books like Transcendent Kingdom that very openly and honestly and like in a very real manner discuss what it is like to be from an immigrant family, or to have a sibling who is dealing with addiction and things like that. Also, from a writing perspective, I found the writing in this to be really great. So even if you're talking about writing more than the themes of the book, I feel like this would be a really great book for people to be studying. Next is maths, which is how do you rate your books? So for a while I didn't actually rate my books because I wanted to rely less on giving it an arbitrary 5 or 4 or 3-star rating and more on my actual thoughts and feelings that I was expressing about the book. But I recently learned about the Compile rating system, and I'm not going to get too much into it right now. Katrina Reeds has a video where she talks about it. This was created by Book Roast, and I will have a bunch of links down in the description for this as well, not only to Katrina's video, but also to the video made by Book Roast. And it is the rating system that I'm starting to use, and I feel like it is less arbitrary than what I was doing before. So when I was reading books before, I would just go with my gut instinct without any justification of why I was giving it a 3 or a 2 or a 5. It was just how I felt. But I have found this rating style to actually really work because it has like a checklist that helps you go through, and it feels less arbitrary. And I personally didn't like giving books ratings that I felt like were just only based on my enjoyment, because that's what I felt. I didn't really take into consideration writing or logic or anything like that. So I really like that this new system that I'm implementing does that. Next is geography. Describe a book that had a strong sense of place or great world building. For this, I think you could do anything by Becky Chambers, but I'm specifically going to mention A Psalm for the Wild Built by Becky Chambers. I found the world in this to be very interesting, and especially it's like a novella. It's short. The world building was fantastic, and the setting was great, and it just felt cozy, and like the world and the setting just kind of felt like coming home. So definitely A Psalm for the Wild Built. Next is religious studies. Which book is the one that you always come back to? Again, The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. This is the book I come back to time and time again and just feel at home in and just love and enjoy. Next is PE, and it's Show Us the Biggest Book on Your TBR. The biggest book on my TBR is The Witchwood Crown by Tad Williams. This comes in at 690 something pages, I believe. 694 pages. For this is the biggest book on my owned TBR. I think I could maybe find a bigger one if I went through my digital TBR, but I was only looking at books I owned, and this is the biggest book on there. Next is music. Which reading format do you think has the best rhythm for reading? I think this depends on the book and the mood you're in. I'm a huge fan of physical books, obviously, but also audiobooks. I love audiobooks. And it kind of just depends on the mood I'm in, which one has a better rhythm for me at the time. Sometimes I'm just in a listening mood and I just want to sit down and listen to my audiobooks. And sometimes I just want to sit down and like physically read. But it really does depend. I think all formats of books are great, even though I don't read ebooks as much as I read physical and audiobooks. This is just so dependent on my mood, honestly. Next is art. Show us 3 books that you think have the best covers. So, A Psalm for the Wild Bill by Becky Chambers. The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers. Transcendent Kingdom by Yakiyasi. Every Hearted Doorway by Seanan McGuire. The 10th Anniversary of Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. And I could go on, but I already mentioned more than 3, so I'm going to leave it at that. And last is Modern Foreign Language, recommended translated book that you enjoyed. For this, I'm going to recommend a trilogy, which is the Remembrance of Earth's Past trilogy by Cixin Liu. The first one being The Three Body Problem. Second is The Dark Forest, and lastly, Death's End. I think this is my favorite translated work I've ever read, with I actually think the first one being my favorite book in the series, The Three Body Problem. These books were translated from Chinese, and they are honestly just so good. And if you are into sci-fi, definitely check them out. They are very science heavy. There are parts of this book that went completely over my head because it is just science talk, but that does not bother me at all. I love that. So definitely loved this book and this trilogy, and I think this is the best translated work I've ever read. Did I already say that? I don't know. It still is true though. And that is the School Days book tag. I'm going to go ahead and tag David Wiley and Aaron Facer to do this. Thank you everyone so much for watching. I hope you have enjoyed. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!